Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure I'll get a question from my mom, Scarborough-Gilwilden, when that time comes up. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise today in this House to speak to Bill C-15, an act to amend the National Defence Act and to make consequential amendments to other acts, and to speak to the amendments made by the member for Saanich Gulf Islands. Let me begin, Mr. Speaker, by underscoring the fact that there are many important reforms in this bill, and the NDP will be somewhat reluctantly supporting this long overdue update to the military justice system when it comes up for a vote at report stage. With that being said, Mr. Speaker, New Democrats also recognize that this legislation is just a first step, with much more left to accomplish to effect the type of change we are seeking for Canada's military justice system. Members of the Canadian Forces are held to an extremely high standard of discipline, Mr. Speaker, and they, in turn, deserve a judicial system that is held to a comparable standard. Mr. Speaker, at its core, Bill C-15 is similar to the version of Bill C-41 that came out of committee in the 40th Parliament. However, Mr. Speaker, important amendments passed at committee stage in the last Parliament were not included by the government in Bill C-15. One such omission was the failure to include a measure to broaden the list of offences removed from the consequences of a criminal code or a criminal record, Mr. Speaker. Most Canadians would be shocked to learn that the people who bravely serve our country can receive a criminal record from a system that lacks the due process usually required in civilian criminal courts, which is why New Democrats fought relentlessly to ensure that the necessary changes were made to streamline and modernize Canada's military justice system. So, Mr. Speaker, when C-15 was first presented in October 2011, New Democrats immediately recognized the deficiencies of this bill and set to work both in the House and in committee to ensure that this legislation was the best it possibly could be to achieve the goal of modernizing Canada's military justice system. My colleagues at committee pressed for the necessary changes and amendments which would reduce the effect of disciplinary offences, of possible criminal records, and challenge the failure of the legislation to grant full charter rights. Thanks to the hard work of New Democrats on the Defence Committee, particularly the member for St. John's East, the list of offences and the number of cases which will not attract a criminal record has been broadened and now accounts for approximately 95% of offences. New Democrats additionally fought to ensure that previously convicted CF members would actually have their records expunged. We also moved a series of amendments to improve the bill, demonstrating our commitment to reform, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, some of the key amendments presented by my colleagues included giving the Chief of Defence Staff the financial authority to compensate CF members in the grievance process, changing the composition of the Grievance Committee to include a 60% civilian membership and exclude active-duty CF members, enhancing the independence of the board, Mr. Speaker. A provision ensuring that a person who is convicted of an offence during a summary trial is not unfairly subjected to a criminal record, and clarifying the letter of the law as recommended by Justice Lesage to make it clear that a charge must be laid within a year of a service offence. So, Mr. Speaker, in spite of all of the successful amendments which New Democrats were able to make at the committee stage, we recognize that much still needs to be done to ensure that Canada's military justice system is the best that it can be. Some of the changes New Democrats would still like to see include conducting an independent wall-to-wall review of the military justice system and provide a legislative response to the Lesage report within a year, Mr. Speaker. Here, the NDP stands with esteemed Justice Letourneau in calling for the Canadian government to end its one-off approach to amending the military justice system and to conduct a comprehensive and independent review of the entirety of the sections of the National Defence Act pertaining to the military justice system. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the NDP is calling for the Conservative government to bring a legislative response to the Lesage report within 1 year. The members of the Canadian Forces, Mr. Speaker, deserve no less. Let's look at the reforming of the summary trial system, Mr. Speaker. Here, although some progress has been made, we believe that further reforms are necessary and a review of the summary trial system is required. Currently, a conviction of the service offence from a summary trial in the Canadian Forces may result in a criminal record without proper procedural fairness for the CF member, Mr. Speaker. Summary trials are held without the ability of the accused to consult counsel. There are no appeals or transcripts of the trial, and the judge is the accused person's commanding officer. This process, Mr. Speaker, can have an unduly harsh effect on the offender in question. It lacks traditional judicial standards, and New Democrats would like to see more reform in this area. We also would like to see the expansion of the service offences exempted from receiving criminal records, Mr. Speaker. So here, New Democrats understand that minor service offences should not lead to criminal records that impact CF members outside of their military duties. We've fought for an expansion of these offences, Mr. Speaker, since C-15 was first introduced, and will continue fighting on behalf of the service men and women whose post-military lives could be affected by minor service offences which result in criminal records. We also think we need to reform the grievance system, Mr. Speaker. A major flaw in the military grievance system is that the Chief of Defence Staff presently lacks the authority to resolve any and all financial claims arising from a grievance, contrary to our recommendation in the Lamer report. Despite the fact that the Minister of National Defence agreed to this recommendation 8 years ago, the matter is still not resolved, Mr. Speaker. New Democrats believe that the Minister should finally implement this recommendation at the earliest possible date. We also believe, Mr. Speaker, they need to strengthen the Military Police Complaints Commission. C-15 gives the Vice Chief of Defence Staff authority to direct military police investigations. Mr. Speaker, this measure is inconsistent with existing arrangements in the accountability framework, as in clear violation of maintaining the independence of the Military Police Complaints Commission. Allowing the chain of command to interfere with military police investigations is an irresponsible measure, Mr. Speaker, that flies in the face of the harsh lessons learnt from the Somalia inquiry. Past and present chairs of the Military Police Complaints Commission have stated as much. Come 2015, Mr. Speaker, New Democrats will work to make the changes necessary to ensure the full independence of the MPCC. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, with colleagues like the member from St. John's East and the member from Sackville Eastern Shore and their continuing commitment to military families and our veterans, Canadians can be assured that the NDP will continue fighting to bring more fairness to the Canadian military justice system for the members of our armed forces who put their lives on the line for the service of Canada each and every day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.